I woke up to the sound of crackling. At first, I thought I was still dreaming, maybe hearing a bonfire or a summer cookout in the distance. But when the thick, harsh smoke started pouring through my bedroom window, I knew something was wrong. My chest tightened as I threw off the covers and ran to the window. What I saw made my blood run cold. My motorcycle, the one issued by the state, was completely engulfed in flames right in my own driveway. Fire danced over its frame, licking the pavement like a twisted bonfire. My first reaction was to grab the fire extinguisher, but even as I stumbled towards the door, I realized it was too late. The flames were too high, the damage already done. The heat hit me the moment I stepped outside. My bare feet slapped against the cool concrete as my heart pounded in my ears. I stood there, staring at the wreckage of my motorcycle, but beneath the shock, a slow burn of anger started to build. That's when I heard it. Laughter. I turned toward the house across the street, where a small group of people stood in the shadows of a perfectly manicured lawn, wine glasses in hand. They clinked them together as if celebrating. My jaw tightened as recognition set in. It was the Homeowners Association board. Mrs. Pennington, the ever-smug president, stood at the front, whispering something to the others before flashing a self-satisfied grin in my direction. "Next time, follow the rules, Mr. Dawson," she called out, her voice dripping with mock politeness. For a moment, I was frozen, not from fear, not from shock, but because I couldn't believe just how far these people had gone. I'd dealt with criminals, reckless drivers, and the occasional street tough, but I'd never imagined suburban homeowners would cross the line into felony territory over something this petty. 2 days ago, these same people had knocked on my door with a welcome letter, a piece of paper wrapped in thinly veiled threats. The Homeowners Association, more like the neighborhood mafia, had made it clear that joining was strongly encouraged. They spoke in that rehearsed, fake-friendly tone that always made my skin crawl. They wanted control over my property, my house, and even where I parked my own vehicle. I had politely declined, not thinking much of it at the time. Then the fines started rolling in. First, a notice for grass being a half-inch too long. Then another claiming my police motorcycle violated some obscure rule and needed to be hidden out of sight. A $500 fine. I had laughed at that one, tossed it in the trash, and went on with my day. I wasn't part of their ridiculous little club, and they had no power over me. Apparently, they didn't like that. The fire department arrived within minutes. Soon, my driveway was a mess of flashing lights and firefighters battling the blaze. The smell of burnt rubber and melted metal filled the air as I stood there, arms crossed, watching in silence. My motorcycle, the one I had used to chase criminals, respond to emergencies, and serve my community, was reduced to a twisted, blackened hunk of scrap. One of the firefighters, a guy I knew from town, walked over and let out a low whistle. "Damn, Jack, what the hell happened?" I exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of my neck. "What happened?" His brows shot up. "You serious?" he asked, waiting for an answer I didn't feel like giving. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My jaw was so tight, I could feel the ache in my teeth. I knew exactly who was behind this. The security cameras on my property had caught every single moment. Hours later, when the fire was out and all that remained was the smoldering wreckage, I sat in my living room, reviewing the footage. My fingers tapped against the table as I watched the grainy black and white video. The HOA board, yes, the entire board, had crept onto my property in the dead of night. I watched as one of them, a balding guy in a sweater vest, poured gasoline over my bike like some kind of maniac. Another woman, Mrs. Pennington's right-hand woman, struck the match. There was video evidence. They had set fire to a police motorcycle. Not just any motorcycle, but a state-owned law enforcement vehicle. A felony. A major felony. And the best part? They had no idea who I really was. Sure, they knew I was a cop. They probably thought I was just some low-level officer with a crappy patrol beat and a bad attitude. What they didn't know was that I was a state trooper with jurisdiction far beyond their little suburban enclave. They had no idea they'd just committed a federal crime right under the nose of someone who could bring their entire world crashing down. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile creeping onto my face. Oh, they'd really messed up this time. The next morning, as the sun painted the sky in soft orange and blue, I stood outside, arms crossed, watching the HOA board gather for their usual gossip session by the community garden. Mrs. Pennington, still dressed in her power suit and pearl necklace like she was running for office, shot me a triumphant look. "Such a shame about your motorcycle," she called out, fake sympathy oozing from every word. "Perhaps next time you'll reconsider our community guidelines." I smiled, slow, deliberate, and with a bit of a wolfish grin. "Oh, I definitely will," I replied, my tone light, almost playful. "In fact, I'd love to discuss it with all of you, maybe even over at the station." She blinked. "The station?" I pulled out my badge, flipping it open just enough for the sunlight to glint off it. Her face changed instantly. The smile faltered, and the color drained from her face so quickly I thought she might faint. The other HOA members shifted uncomfortably, their earlier confidence vanishing like mist in the sun. "Yeah," I continued, enjoying the way her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "You know, seeing as how you and your little gang committed arson against state property, I think we should have a proper chat about it. Maybe with a few of my colleagues. You know, the ones who arrest people for felonies." Mrs. Pennington took a step back, then another. The other board members looked like deer caught in headlights. I let out a slow chuckle. "See you soon, folks." With that, I turned and walked back into my house, leaving them to stew in their impending doom. This was going to be fun. The HOA members were panicking. It was obvious from the way they huddled together outside Mrs. Pennington's house, whispering frantically. Some of them kept glancing at my house, their faces a mix of dread and confusion. I watched from my porch, sipping my morning coffee, enjoying the sight of their world unraveling. These were the same people who had laughed and smirked as they set my motorcycle on fire. Now, they looked like scared rats trapped on a sinking ship. And the best part? They still had no idea how deep in trouble they actually were. I had spent the entire night reviewing the security footage, making copies, and preparing my next move. It wasn't just about revenge, though let's be honest, that part was pretty satisfying. It was about justice, about making sure these self-important busybodies learned they weren't above the law. By mid-morning, I got a call from the station. My buddy, Officer Martinez, had already seen the footage. His reaction was priceless. "You mean to tell me a bunch of suburban retirees and soccer moms committed first-degree arson on a state trooper's bike?" He laughed for a full minute. "Oh man, this is going to be fun." He promised to handle the paperwork while I prepared for the next step. The HOA meeting was scheduled for noon, and I wasn't about to miss it. After a quick breakfast, I dressed in my casual off-duty clothes, grabbed my badge, and headed down the street. The meeting was being held at the community clubhouse. As I walked toward the clubhouse, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. The HOA's reign of petty tyranny was about to come to an end. They had underestimated me, and now they'd have to face the consequences. It wasn't just about the fire. It was about showing them that no one was above the law, no matter how powerful they thought they were in their little suburban bubble. When I walked into that meeting, I wasn't just a state trooper. I was the one who would bring their world crashing down. And that felt damn good.